You see, that little girl speaks for 1 million children across this country who've lost their daddy. And why? Well, he's got someone waiting for him in New Jersey. He's got to think about himself. He can't worry about a daughter that's hurting, that misses her daddy. He's got to do his own thing. He's got to do what feels good without regard for the consequences for those that depend on him. I feel fathers hold within their hands the power of saving the family, because women in most cases will follow his leadership if he'll take the time, effort, and energy to devote himself to his family. And I suppose there's a reason why I feel this so strongly. You'll have to excuse me getting choked up a moment ago, but this is kind of an emotional week for me here in San Antonio. For I came to your city almost exactly 1 year ago to speak to the Texas Pediatric Society and the Alamo Heights Methodist Church. Shirley came with me. We flew in here on a Thursday night, and I was to speak on Friday. When we arrived at the hotel at 11 o'clock, there was a message. Isn't that funny? It's been a year, and I can still feel it as though it were yesterday. There was a message to call the pastor of the church where my mother and dad attended, Dr. Paul Cunningham, and it said, "It is an emergency." And I went to the phone. I told Shirley something terrible has happened for them to have tracked me down here. And I called, and Dr. Cunningham said, "It is true. Your dad has had a major myocardial infarction and heart attack." Paramedics got there in just a matter of moments, 8 or 10 minutes. They were able to save him. He's now in intensive care and in pretty bad shape. I said, "Is he dying?" And he said, "No, I don't think so." He said, "In fact, he's stable in an unstable condition." I said, "Do you think I ought to catch a plane right now and come? I have a very heavy day tomorrow. I'll cancel it. I'm sure Dr. Fitch and the others would understand." He said, "No, I think we're going to make it. I'll stay in touch with you." I got up the next morning. I had one of the longest days of my life. I did 3 newspaper interviews at 9 o'clock. We ran across town and did a live radio broadcast, ran back across town and did a live television news thing at noon. Then I came running back to the hotel where I was to change clothes and immediately speak to 300 doctors at 2 o'clock. They had a meal sent up, and I was just time to run in. I opened the door. Shirley met me there with tears in her eyes. I said, "What's the matter, Shirley?" And she said, "Dr. Cunningham wants you to call him back." I ran to the phone and called Dr. Cunningham, and he said, "I'm afraid that I have some very bad news for you." He said, "Your dad isn't expected to live through the night. He has both congestion and arrhythmia, which is a terrible combination after a heart attack." And he said, "We do not expect him to live. You better get here as soon as possible. And I also have to tell you that your uncle, with whom I was close, died at 10:30 this morning in the same hospital." I fell apart because what most people do not know is that my dad is not only my very good friend and my father, of course, but also my partner. Nearly everything I write originated in a conversation with him. He's had such an enormous influence on me in my adult years. My mother's primary influence was in those critical childhood years, but I was losing my friend. Nevertheless, I felt God brought me to San Antonio to speak to those doctors, and I gathered my wits about me, and he helped me, and I did speak to them. And when I was through, I just fell apart. Frosty Smith and Clarence Bray took me to the airport, and God gave them both to me, for I've never been so overwhelmed with emotion in my life. Shirley and I met at the airport, caught a plane, cried and prayed all the way to Kansas City. There must have been hundreds of people praying for my dad around the country. And when I arrived, I expected to see my mother at the airport, which would obviously mean my dad was gone, but she was not there. The wife of the president of the college where my dad was an art teacher, head of the Department of Art, was there instead, and she had a smile on her face, and she gave me the news that my dad was remarkably better, and he was waiting to see me at the hospital. And I got to go in and talk to him. And share those things that you never get around to till it's almost too late. And I thank God that he gave me 79 more beautiful days with my dad before he took him on December 4th of last year. So coming back to San Antonio at this time has real meaning for me.